The 1986 The Transformers the movie is a watershed moment in the franchise. Generation 1 can really be broken up in two distinct phases, pre and post-movie, or if you want to get biblical about it, before and after the death of Optimus Prime. One of these days I'll do a video on the 86 movie, as well as my opinions on some of the pre-production materials that have been dug up over the decades, but all you really need to know about my opinion on the final product is that I think it is heavy metal. Not only in the fact that it's a badass rock and roll odyssey, but also I feel like it has more akin to animated features like, well, heavy metal.
You got touch! You got the power! Yeah!
Now, opinions on the 86 movie are still pretty contentious to this day. Some people love it, some people hate it. Some people were completely broken by it. But one of the most jarring aspects of it, outside of all the gratuitous character death, is the major aesthetic shift. The first 2 years of the Transformers franchise took place in the then contemporary years of 1984 and 1985, so everything was pretty familiar. But much like any good anime, we had a time jump. So the movie takes place in the far-off space year of 2005. And the series subsequently follows up in 2006, unless of course you're in Japan, in which case it's the far-off future year of 2010, or 2010, the year we made contact.
If there's one thing I know, it's how to drive when I'm stoned. It's like you know your perspective's fucked, so you just gotta let your hands work the controls as if you're straight.
Cup and Hot Rod just bought it. I can't deal with that now.
Now, in the continuity of the story, it's just because it's the future, but really this design change comes from the fact that in real life, Hasbro is starting to run out of microchange and Diaclone molds to import from Takara, so they began collaborating on new ideas. Takara just drafted out a lot of basic ones, Future Car 1, Future Car 2, Space Jet 1, Space Jet 2, and it was through the collaborative work of Hasbro as well as Floro Dairy that these basic sketches and concepts were fully realized as characters we know now. It was through this collaborative process that we'd see the 1986 movie cast take shape. Springer, Cup, Hot Rod, Cyclonus, Scourge, Galvatron, and as such, Takara began prototyping out new toys for the new wave. But much like any movie, changes get made no matter how far into production they are, so the character models that the figures were based off of were revised again, meaning that the characters and the toys just look slightly different. A great example of this is the fact that Galvatron was originally sketched and concepted as gray, and thus the toy was gray, but the final movie gave him that awesome purple deco. However, one of the victims of these production changes was Arcee. Obviously not in the movie, Arcee is an integral part of the ensemble cast and iconic in her own right. However, her toy was cancelled. Why she was ultimately cancelled, we'll never truly know. Any notes or documentation between Takara and Hasbro on the subject have most definitely been lost to time, but it could have been for any myriad of reasons. Maybe Hasbro thought a bright pink girl Transformer would sell poorly, or maybe Takara took one look at the new character model and decided it was completely impractical to make into a toy. However, what we do know is that there were two pre-production pieces created for a potential 1986 Arcee figure, yet it's a little misleading. These weren't prototypes in the modern sense. They're not test shots or engineering samples or even kit bashes. Instead, these were two maquettes, one in robot mode and one in vehicle mode, based off of the preliminary character art. These handcrafted mock-ups never made their way out of the Takara offices, and the only proof of their existence are a select few photographs that were shared in hobby magazines. These photographs were also seen in the bonus features of the 1996 Laserdisc release of the Headmasters anime. Up until relatively recently, those maquette photos, as well as the knowledge of a production process, have been obscure and esoteric to say the least. So within the Transformers community, the prospect of a Generation 1 Arcee has taken on a near mythological quality, as if 40 years ago, Takara's very own Pygmalion carved the perfect Transformer out of stone. Yet she was lost to time and the cruelty of Hasbro's short-sightedness. However, after nearly 40 years, this smoldering ember, thought lost to time, has been reignited by the passion of one Takara designer, and through his efforts, it's been realized as Missing Link, Arcee. Missing Link began in 2024 as part of Takara's 40th anniversary celebration for the Transformers brand, and the design philosophy behind the toy line is that it would take original G1 figures and designs and bring them into the modern age with improved engineering and articulation. But Missing Link goes beyond G1 with elbows, as not only do they have intricate sculpted and painted detail work based off of the original G1 stickers, they also have new accessories made in a vintage style. On top of that, they seem to be revitalizing old, abandoned concepts and canceled prototypes, and Arcee is the pinup girl of canceled Transformers prototypes. Released a timely 39 years after her original debut in 1986, this is Missing Link CO7 Arcee. And if you want to uncover more lost artifacts and toys, then be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Ring that bell for notifications because PDX Toy Collective is the only Transformers fan that's got friends in every town and every village from here to the Sudan, speaks over a dozen languages, knows every custom, can blend in, disappear, you'll never find me again. And with any luck, I've got the Grail already.
Does anyone here speak English?
Now, Missing Link Arcee's futuristic sports car mode is based very squarely, pun intended, on that original Fluoro Dairy concept art, or at least the first or second version before it was revised into the Arcee we all know and love. Because of this, her alt mode is very angular and is very square. However, with the low profile and what few curves there are, she actually does look incredibly swift and incredibly fast, almost akin to Blur's alternate mode. And while I can't prove it, I do suspect some design elements and cues made their way from Blur's concept art to Arcee's, as they both have the very long extended hood section, the large side fenders, and the Jetsons-y style fin antenna in the back. Now, seeing as she is a, well, car, there's not a lot of play features in vehicle mode. However, she's not just any car. She's an open-top convertible future space car with sculpted interior, and that means you can get a minifigure to drive around in her. There's not really a set scale here, but her bucket seats are big enough to accommodate at least one Dionaut or similarly small minifigure. Granted, this isn't an intended play feature, but just like Scooter from the GoBots or a cat in a box, if it fits, it sits. Overall, I really do like this sleek, low-to-the-ground interpretation of Arcee's sports car mode, and I think when you compare it to the finalized version that we see in the movie, there's a pretty notable contrast. Granted, this is Thrilling 30 Arcee, but you get the point. Now, the alternate mode that we see in the movie is bulked out quite a bit from her original concept art, and because of that, it makes me think of a muscle car, at least a little bit. A goofy 80s futuristic pink Cadillac, if you will. Whereas that original concept art in Missing Link Arcee here is very sleek, it's very trim, and it looks like it's built for speed. More of a dragster than anything else. And while the vehicle mode is very visually striking, that's not where the figure shines, as she looks best in robot mode. This is where we see the biggest contrast between the original concept of Arcee and her finalized character model, and the first thing that screams out to you is that color scheme. A bright sherbet orange with a sweet bubblegum pink accent maroon and a pale robin's egg blue for her face. Both Fluoro Dairy and the Toei animation staff used a lot of wild and bright colors in those preliminary character models. Lots of pinks and maroons and teals and yellows and oranges that we just didn't see after that point, much less on the toys. So it's really amazing to see Arcee rock this high contrast day glow concept deco. Now, under normal circumstances, I'm all about that crisp, clean, pink and white combo that we see on Generation 1 Arcee. It's chic, it's stylish, and the right amount of 80s futuristic. But there's something about Missing Link Arcee here that works incredibly well with that orange sherbet and strawberry showgirl deco. Not only do I think that the anime colorway version of Missing Link Arcee looks comparatively dull, she actually looks substantially weaker, in my opinion, and I think a lot of that blame can be put on the head sculpt. There's just something kind of off about the anime colorway's portrait. It just feels kind of soft and out of focus, like there's a lack of depth or detail on there. However, I think the prototype portrait is absolutely gorgeous. She actually does kind of look like she was carved of marble, with these cheekbones that could cut diamonds, and the Princess Leia buns of fun covered in techno detail. And while they are minimal, there are some great paint accents here, like the maroon used for her head crest, as well as the venting detail on her Princess Leia buns, as well as the amazing addition of orange lipstick. I truly do love this addition. It adds a lot of depth to her portrait, and it makes her bright blue eyes pop like firecrackers. Now, her makeup isn't the only thing that's stellar. She also has amazing articulation. Now, granted, it's a little awkward considering not only is she a Generation 1 design, but she's a design based off of a maquette that never had articulation to begin with. So it's a little strange to see a figure that looks this stiff and this antiquated move like a modern action figure. She does include one accessory that makes her poses a little bit more interesting, and that's a small, light gray, kind of off blue pistol. And honestly, I'm not really a fan of this pistol. the sculpt feels a little off to me. It doesn't feel like any of the other accessories you see on the late 80s figures. It looks much more animation accurate than anything else, so it just feels strange, at least in my opinion. I would have preferred some fakey made-up sculpt work of a hypothetical space blaster that Arcee may or may not have had if she was a real toy back in the day. You can get her into some pretty dynamic poses, but let's be fair here. In the grand scheme of things, she's going to be standing stock still with the other Generation 1 action figures who don't have knees or elbows to save their life. She may be missing Link, but she looks best with the 86 movie cast. Now, alright, that intro might have been a little overwrought and overdramatic, Takara's very own Pygmalion sculpting the perfect fembot, but you know what? It's warranted, especially when you consider that not one, not two, not three, but 4 total different attempts to make a G1 Arcee were shit-canned by either Hasbro or Takara before the new millennium. Now, obviously, there's that 1986 maquette, and oddly enough, of all of the Arcee prototypes that were proposed in the vintage era, that's actually the one that made it the farthest. After that figure was canceled, the idea of an Arcee figure was proposed again in 1987-1988 when Hasbro floated the idea of a pink and white repaint of Chrome Dome as a Headmaster Arcee. This one's a little confusing considering all the notes we have are from Takara, but obviously she was never a Headmaster in the Headmasters anime, only in the Rebirth miniseries, which, was the end of the original G1 cartoon, so no wonder it got canceled. In 1987, there was going to be an 8-inch standard-scale Soulphoebe soft vinyl figure based off of Arcee's Studio Ox character model, the ones that we would see in the TV comics magazines around the time, but for whatever reason, Takara canceled it. Now granted, a few production samples were made and made their way into collectors' hands over the decades, but technically speaking, she was never supposed to see the light of day. At some point in the early 90s, Takara actually drafted up an Action Masters Arcee. Now, I've told you before on this channel, I actually really like Action Masters. I think they're fun, I think they're quirky, I think they're eye-catching and got great character design. And I think an Action Master Arcee would have been amazing. Not only because it would have been a cool toy, but also think about it. It would have been a veritable holy grail of the Generation 1 toy line. The only true vintage Arcee, and would have been some insane Action Master exclusive to Europe or Japan or something like that. Nigh impossible to find on the secondary market. And Takara's art looks spot on to the Sunbow character model, so not only would this have been the only true blue vintage G1 Arcee toy, it would have also been insanely accurate to the cartoon. If Action Masters Arcee was made back in the day, I guarantee you she would have been one of, if not the, most desirable figure in the entirety of Generation 1, ironically nestled in the least desirable G1 subline. Though, of course, she wasn't made. G1 was canceled not too long after the Action Masters debut in North America, and then Takara trudged along a little bit longer in Japan, though G1 did succeed and thrive over in Europe, so who knows. Arcee wouldn't get her first figure until 1996, a non-transforming resin garage kit made by MC Access operating under a one-day license from Takara. Back in the day, it actually wasn't uncommon for Takara, Bandai, or other larger companies to license out some of their more iconic properties to small model makers, Soulphoebe creators, or artists for conventions like Wonderfest or Superfest. Typically, they'd be very short-term, hence one-day license. This is in a hugely stark contrast to Hasbro, where you may as well have been pulling teeth to convince them to license out a figure for the official Transformers fan conventions. Now, back in the 90s, what we now know as BotCon was a lot messier. There are a few different groups of people vying for Hasbro's attention to be the top dog, and one of the messier groups was the Men in Black. The Men in Black had exactly one BotCon under their belt, and arguably, that was one too many. BotCon 1996 is legendary within the Transformers community as being an unmitigated disaster. If you talk to an old-school Transformers fan that was actually at that convention, they will look at you like they were drafted into Viet-fucking-Nam. It was that legendarily bad. But the Men in Black had intended BotCon 1996 to be legendary, just not a disaster. No, 1996 was the 10th anniversary of the Transformers the movie, so they had originally proposed to Hasbro an Action Master Arcee figure as the con exclusive. This is backed up by the fact that for some ungodly fucking reason, all of the marketing for BotCon 1996 was Pulp Fiction themed because, I don't know, the Men in Black got high off their own Laserdisc supply, but the point is, Arcee takes the place of Uma Thurman in this horribly drawn dot matrix flyer. Hasbro quickly shot this idea down, and you know what? It's probably for the best, because even if the Men in Black got the exclusive rights, they probably couldn't get their shit together to deliver. And instead, we got Onyx Primal, he's fine, you know, he's uninspired, but he's fine. He looks good with the other weirdo BotCon Beast Wars colorways. It wouldn't be until the year 2001 that we got our first transforming Arcee figure, and she was a weirdo BotCon Beast Wars exclusive colorway. That's right, she's a pink and white redeco of Transmetal to Black Arachnia, which she looks really sharp and really cool, but definitely does not look like G1 Arcee. Now granted, I'm biased. As I've said before on this channel, I like weirdo colorway figures, but that's truly all she is. It's not Arcee. It doesn't feel like Arcee, it doesn't look like Arcee. God bless Susan Blue for doing some voice work and the 3H Comics for doing some heavy lifting with the Wreckers continuity, but it just ain't Arcee. And if I went to BotCon 01 and was met with this figure expecting a G1 Arcee, I would be very disappointed. And thus, BotCon Arcee is the second greatest tragedy to hit America in 2001.
You're wrong.
It wouldn't be until, let's see, 10, 11, 12, holy shit, 13 years later that we actually got a G1 Arcee figure based off of that original Sunbow character model in the Generations Thrilling 30 toy line. I like this figure a lot. I've got the Takara Legends version in my collection, and I think she's fantastic. Great transformation, fantastic sculpt work, lots of fun accessories, and a few different great colorways. The Takara Legends version is very animation accurate, almost one-to-one. The Hasbro Thrilling 30 version takes some liberties here and there, but still looks good, especially with the little hints of black here and there. And then if you want to go even darker than that, there is the SDCC Combiner Hunters version, where she's virtually all black with a little bit of pink. It looks really sharp in my opinion. And I also think this figure is very unfairly maligned in modern discourse. A lot of Transformers fans are prudes and think she's over-sexualized, and I say she's got some curves. My God. Look, the Transformers fandom, or more accurately, the fandom war within, is unyieldingly awful, annoying, and abrasive. Everybody involved is a hypocrite, myself included, and nobody can seem to accept the fact that sometimes artists and designers draw sexy ladies, and sometimes those sexy ladies just happen to be robots. Everybody involved in this argument is a hypocrite, because I guarantee you, one side that's yelling loudly about it has like 10 terabytes of Optimus plowing Megatron fan art and fan fiction, and then the other side just genuinely hates everybody, everything, and anything that's fun. So, you know, everybody sucks. Well, that's a huge bummer, so let's keep going, because Transformers never stops, and neither does Arcee. She's got a few more figures under her belt in the Generations era. Obviously, she has a Masterpiece outing, which I think is pretty good. Looks great as Nightbird as well. And then while she did show up in Revenge of the Fallen, she made a more recognizable debut in the Bumblebee movie as a pretty cool cyberpunk character model, and then a fantastic design in Rise of the Beasts. That movie fucking blows, it sucks and is boring, but Arcee looks fantastic in that. Great, fun, spunky, just genuinely a good interpretation of Arcee, and she has my favorite aspect of G1 Arcee, her sweet Oakleys that only show up for like 1 second in the Transformers movie. Look, Arcee may have been incredibly neglected in the 80s, but she's really hit her stride now. Arcee's still going strong because the fandom's still going strong. All arguments aside, all nonsense aside, everybody universally loves Arcee. That's why she's been so consistent over the past 40 years. She's shown up in multiple cartoons, obviously the live-action movies, and tons of toys since her toy debut in 2001. And Missing Link Arcee wouldn't be here if not for the fans, or at least one fan in particular. Back in the late 1990s, Hironori Kobayashi joined the Takara design team after impressing former Microman Microchange design leader Hideki Yokai with one particular piece, a scratch-built Transformer based off of the original Arcee maquette. From that point on, Kobayashi's designed tons of amazing figures for the Transformers toy line, but as a true fan, he always comes back to Arcee. He's not only responsible for a wonderful scratch-built figure back in the 90s, but also the Generations Thrilling 30 figure in the 2000s, and Missing Link Arcee. As not only is he a lead designer in Takara, he is also the lead of the Missing Link division. And Missing Link Arcee here fills in potentially the biggest gap in the entirety of Generation 1, bar Missing Link Unicron, of course. She's a perfect capstone for the 1986 toy line. She is a wonderful representation of one of the most beloved characters in the entirety of the franchise, and is just genuinely a perfect toy and a perfect example of everything Missing Link can and should be.